Shabbat Shalom. It's truly an honor to be here with you this evening, to be here with my friend and colleague and teacher. It's an extraordinary place, and I've heard so many beautiful things about this congregation over the years, and I'm honored to finally be here. I also am proud to be able to bring you greetings from a son of this congregation, Michael Danziger, as the rabbi mentioned. He's a student in my liturgy class, and I want you to know he's doing fine work. He's doing fine work. And your Rabbi Emeritus was so kind and so sweet to send me an email this week telling me that he'd be in Jerusalem this week, actually talking to my students, but wanted to welcome me to this home. I got the VIP tour today from Rabbi Greenstein, and I have to say it's an extraordinary city. Right off the plane, he took me to a holy place. He took me to Stacks, and then actually we did go to another holy place. He took me by the cemetery, and I saw a little bit of the history of this community. And we had a chance to go to the Civil Rights Museum, Sun Records. This was all in about 2 hours. And he also fed me lunch. I just want to say that your rabbi makes the Energizer Bunny look lethargic, okay? I'd flown all morning from Los Angeles too, so, and he just kept going and going. He dropped me off. He said, I'll be back in 30 minutes. I was like, 30 minutes? So it was an extraordinary day. Everywhere we went, Rabbi Greenstein knew someone, or in fact, many people at the bank. I'm not sure how he knows everyone in this town. And everyone he saw, he jumped up, gave him a hug and a kiss. And even strangers, by the way. There was a few moments where I wasn't sure if he actually knew the person, but they were warm, greeted him with a lot of joy. And I said to him over lunch, I said, you're very blessed. You have something extraordinary here, because it's obvious that you're so at home in this place, and that this place, your home, has such love for you. Well, almost 3 years ago, searching for a deeper sense of home in my own life and in the life of my children, my wife and I decided to go home to Israel and to take the ultimate plunge to make Aliyah. And let me tell you, it has not been boring. That's for sure. These days, when you make Aliyah, right there at Ben Gurion Airport, there's an office where they take you and they do all the paperwork, and you actually come in an American or whatever else you might have been before, and you walk out of this room as an Israeli. There was a person actually greeting me at the plane when I got off, and he's a volunteer who comes there to greet new Olim, and he walked me down to this office and introduced me to the clerk there, a man named Yaakov. Yaakov said, I've got some paperwork to fill out. Why don't you make yourself comfortable? There was some beverages. He said, there's a phone over there. You can make calls. He said, local calls, though. Okay? We're not crazy. So I called some of my friends in Israel to tell them that I'd arrived. And a few minutes later, he's filled out everything, and he asked me to come over and sit at the desk to sign some documents. And I come over, and there's a sign right behind him, and it says in about 10 different languages, of course, including Hebrew, Bruchim Habaim Habaita. Welcome home. I get goosebumps just thinking about that moment. What is it for a Jew to come home as an Oleh Chadash, a new immigrant? Well, in part it means that right there at the airport there is an office that's been designed just for that purpose, to welcome new immigrants, to process them as quickly and efficiently as possible. It means that certain basic services for all of Israel's citizens are taken care of right away, even if you're a brand new citizen. In fact, within about 48 hours of making Aliyah, I had comprehensive health care and all sorts of other protections. And it's very high quality health care too. There's a lot of Jewish doctors there. I want you to know that. Coming home as a new immigrant, as an Oleh Chadash, means living in Jewish time. I remember my first Rosh Hashanah in Jerusalem. I went out for a jog. It was about 2 days before Rosh Hashanah came in, and I was running. It was a beautiful fall day, and I'm running along and not really paying attention, and all of a sudden, boom, something hits me in my head. I look up, and I've run into a pomegranate that's dangling from this pomegranate tree, which is, of course, the traditional fruit that we eat on Rosh Hashanah. And there, just at the right time, just in the right place, there's a reminder from the Holy Land that I'm living in Jewish time. Before Purim, before Passover, before every Jewish holiday, on the buses, the little screen on the top that tells you the bus line that you're on, it says in Hebrew, Chag Sameach, happy holiday. And traffic cops, even as they're writing you tickets on Friday morning, will say Shabbat Shalom. Coming home also means being responsible in a whole new way. Everything that works in Israel, and there are lots and lots of things that work well there, well, that's because we, the Jewish people, made that happen. But it also means that when things don't go the way we wanted them to, when we don't do the kind of work that we had hoped we would be able to do, when we fall short of our prophetic ideals, well, that's on us too. We are responsible for everything in radical ways. Coming home means feeling rooted in powerful, powerful ways. But it also means being displaced and estranged when you come as a new immigrant. Being a new immigrant is all about displacement and estrangement. Things that you thought you knew how to do, suddenly you don't know how to do at all. How many of you have visited Israel? Wow, that's extraordinary. I know in talking to Micah over the years and in seeing him over the years, I know you guys come regularly, so it's a beautiful thing to see. But you've seen Israeli drivers, yeah? Okay. You know they actually have driver's licenses in Israel, which was a shock to me. I didn't realize that anybody, and they take many lessons, like, you know, how to park on the sidewalk and those kinds of lessons. So it took me about a year to get my driver's license. That was a feeling of being displaced, setting up a bank account, everything. I went to set up the bank account. I got a 4-page document in Hebrew. The clerk just looks at me and says, just sign it. You know, so I did. But there's cultural displacement as well. Israelis can be, how should I put this, refreshingly direct. I don't know if you've experienced that. When I would tell people that I made Aliyah, I got 2 different reactions. One reaction was they'd say, oh, Bemet, you know, wow, where'd you make Aliyah from? And I would explain to them that I moved to Israel from Palo Alto, California. And so about half the Israelis, they'll give you a look, very, very strange and confused look, and they'll say, from Palo Alto? Say yes. Palo Alto, California? Yes. Silicon Valley? Yes. What, did you lose your mind? Ma hishtagata? That's about half. And the other half will say almost the exact opposite. They'll say, oh, that's so beautiful. In fact, I had one man tell me that he wished he was native-born Israeli. He said, I wish I was born chutz la'aretz. I wish I was born outside of Israel so I could have made Aliyah and come to Israel. So there's this incredible sense of being placed and displaced at the same time. There's a sense of displacement in not understanding the culture, even if you speak Hebrew, even if you're born and raised as a Jew, and Israel's always been a place that was supposed to be home. Suddenly you find yourself in a place where there's all sorts of cultural references, famous people that you've never heard of, songs on the radio that everyone seems to know that are new for you. But the deepest sense of estrangement is what it means to be displaced from wherever it is that you came from family and friends. In my case, and in my wife's case, 6,000 to 7,000 miles away, with really only a rather distant cousin in Israel. That's been the hardest thing for us. And in fact, recently, chiefly because of this sense of loneliness and this sense of being displaced, as rooted as we feel there, we actually have made a decision to come back to the United States to be closer to family. And next year, I'll be in Los Angeles, where there are about 150,000 other Israelis. But I'll be in Los Angeles working at a synagogue there. But this experience of ours, and I know that I'll be going back and forth from Israel to the United States, I hope for many, many, many decades to come. And I'll be between these worlds and in both of these worlds. But it's made me think a lot about home. And I was talking to a friend recently about what it means to feel displaced when you move from one home, in this case, to another home. And I said I worried that now that we were coming back to the United States that we'd always feel displaced. You know, when we're here, we'll be longing for there, and when we're back there, we'll be thinking about family and friends here. And he said, instead of thinking about it as being displaced everywhere you go, think about it as being by-placed. And realize that you live in an extraordinary moment. We all do. For the first time in 2,000 years, there's a sovereign Jewish state in Israel. And we can go there to visit and to live and to study and to celebrate. And for the first time in the history of the Jewish diaspora, we Jews in America have found a sense of place and a sense of home that our ancestors 2 generations, 3 generations ago could scarcely have imagined. There are some of you in this room tonight, I won't ask you to raise your hand, but there are people in this room tonight who remember the birth of the state of Israel. And there are people in this room tonight, and thankfully, I doubt any of these kids have experienced this, but there are people in this room tonight who remember a time when there were parts of town that Jews were not permitted to live, and there were professions that were closed to Jews, and you could turn on the radio and hear the most awful things said about our people. We're very, very fortunate to live in a time where that is true, where we truly can be by-placed. In just a few weeks, as your rabbi mentioned, we're going to have the opportunity to sit down at our Passover tables and celebrate by telling our master narrative, the central story of the Jewish people. And we'll remind ourselves that once we were strangers in a strange land and we left that place to try to come home. And of course, one of the ironies of the story is that the leader of that exodus never makes it home. He never gets a chance to come into that land, and maybe that tells us something about being placed and being displaced. But we sit down and we tell this story, and we're reminded of what it was to be strangers, and we're reminded to always look out for the stranger, because we know the heart of the stranger, because we were strangers. And we do this and we tell this story because it's what makes us Jews. We do it because it's good for us. It helps us to be better people. It helps us to be more sensitive people, because we think about what it is to be displaced and to be other and to be estranged, and we try to reach out to those who are experiencing that. And this story needs to be told, this story of estrangement, of being displaced. It's a narrative that continues to resonate and contain truth. But I hope tonight we'll think about this a little bit together and throughout the weekend, and I hope at our Passover Seders we'll think even more about what it means to live in this extraordinary moment that we too often take for granted because we're in it and it's hard to see it when you're in it. But we live at a time when Jews in America and Jews in Israel, I'm not talking about other diaspora communities because that's another conversation, and we know what happened this last week in France. But I'm talking about this diaspora community in America, and I'm talking about our people's ancient homeland, a vibrant, modern, sovereign state in Israel. We are living in an unprecedented time where we can be at home in both of these places. Perhaps for a whole host of factors, both human and maybe divine, we North American Jews have been given the gift of not having to wander anymore, of not having to be strangers in a strange land, whether we're here or whether we're there. We are doubly blessed. And you here at Temple Israel, you are at home here, and you have built, over the past almost 150 years, an extraordinary home here, an extraordinary home here. Sometimes when I'm in a place like this, I think, what would my ancestors who grew up outside of Warsaw in a small shtetl in Poland, if they walked into a room like this and you said, this is a synagogue, and they saw 20 acres of land outside, I think they'd think you were joking. I think they'd think you were pulling their legs. Again, we take it for granted, but let's not. Let's count these blessings, because it's an extraordinary time that we live in, an extraordinary blessing. And let me just invite you and encourage you, all of you young people especially, not only not to take for granted this gift of being by-placed in this world here and there, but to make a commitment to do as your parents and grandparents have so beautifully and ably done here in this community and in other communities all around North America and throughout the world. Let's do our part to ensure that the next generation and the generation after us will be equally blessed, that they will have the strength to do their part, to be able to enjoy the incredible gifts of both home and homeland. Shabbat Shalom.